Welcome back to Homesteading with the Zimmermans, where we work hard and play hard on our little corner of land in Iowa. My husband and I were born and raised Old Order Mennonite, or horse and buggy Mennonite, as some refer to them as. And although we are no longer part of that culture or community, we are intentional about passing on the old-fashioned skills of our childhood to the next generation.
Personally, I would just count backwards. From 11, count 3 backwards.
Good morning, everybody. In today's video, we are going to be doing some Christmas baking. And I know it's early. We still have 3 full weeks until Christmas. But one of the ways that I was taught to prepare ahead of time, from my Mennonite, in the Mennonite culture, one of the ways that we prepared ahead of time was by baking things and immediately freezing them. Let's take, say our wedding. We started 6 weeks before the wedding, we started baking cookies because, as the guests arrive to your wedding in the morning, because it's a morning ceremony, so the guests arrive between 8 and 9 a.m., and they get served cookies and wine, right? So the bride's family, the bride and her mother, bake all these cookies, and we put them in the freezer. We bake them 6 weeks ahead of time. As soon as they are cool, we put them in the freezer, and nobody would ever know that those cookies weren't baked just yet, just the day before the wedding. The weddings are held in the home of the bride, so there's no way you can leave the cookie baking for the week of the wedding. So that's how you prepare ahead of time to host guests. And I use my freezer a lot for feeding my family. Whenever I bake something, I often make a double batch, and one goes in the freezer and one we eat right away. And then within the next couple months, I get that out of the freezer and we enjoy it just like it's fresh. The key is to put it in the freezer as soon as it's cool. That is what preserves the flavor. Last Thanksgiving, we took the family to Colorado Springs and we spent Thanksgiving there. Our daughter was living there at the time. And we ordered a cake from a bakery called Nothing Bunt Cake. And that introduced us to delicious bundt cakes. And so Hadassah has been experimenting with bundt cakes for quite a while, or since last November. And that brings me to introducing you to the sponsor of today's video. So some of you may remember my very first sponsor on this YouTube channel was Carolina Cooker, and how we did a giveaway with this big cast iron double burner pan that you see my family using all the time. So they are sponsoring this video, and not only are they sponsoring this video, they are doing a giveaway. In the giveaway, you can choose to either win this double burner cast iron pan or this fluted cast iron cake pan to make all your bundt cakes. So head on over to their YouTube channel. That's where you're going to enter to win one of these. In the description of my YouTube channel, right down here, you're going to find a discount code for these two pieces. So you'll find a discount code for 5% off of your purchase of either one of these pieces, or you can double up your coupon code and get 10% off when you purchase both of them. So part of our holiday baking today that we're doing is going to be pies. Pies freeze beautifully, and yes, even cream pies, fruit pies, they all freeze beautifully. That's how they are when you buy them from the grocery store. They've been made weeks ago and frozen, right? So And we're going to be making an apple pecan bundt cake, and I'm going to try to put that one in the freezer because like I said in an earlier video, we don't eat a lot of baked goods. It's not part of our daily diet. So it's going in the freezer for a special occasion. Sometimes the adult kids come over unexpectedly on the weekends, and I just really love to pull a treat out of the freezer for those nights, because for some reason, when family is all together and we're eating good homemade food, it just seems to drive the memories just a little deeper into our hearts. So, apple pecan bundt cake is what I'm making. So next, you need some cooking oil. You could use butter or olive oil or melted coconut oil. Today I am using lard. You need a liquid. You can use a liquid cooking oil, but I am melting some lard, and I need 1.5 cups of that. You could use tallow. You can use any animal fat or cooking oil. But we have an abundance of lard and tallow, so there's no use in me buying something, you know, when we have all the fat that we can use that we raised right here on the homestead. If I didn't have tallow or lard or butter, I would probably use a high quality olive oil. So I need 1.5 cups of this. Now I'm just going to mix this together until it's creamy, the sugar and the oil and the eggs. So while I wait on that sugar to dissolve, I'm going to get started with the apples. I need 3.5 cups of apples. You can use any kind of apples that you want. The more tart the apple, the more, you know, the bigger your flavor profile of the cake will be, but I'm not going to go and purchase tart apples if I have sweet apples here. You need about 3 cups of finely diced apples. Okay, that's about 2.5 cups, so we're gonna call that good. Oh, I really meant to whip that some more before I added the apples. I really meant to add the apples and apples last, but it'll be okay. What's done is done. I meant to add those apples last. So we need 3 cups of all-purpose flour. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of cinnamon and 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. I need 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, I chopped them really fine, and I'm going to go a little light on them because my family is not super crazy. Or I should say the younger members of the family are not super crazy about nuts in their baked goods. So, all right, we are ready to put this into our bundt pan. So the apple pecan bundt cake turned out beautifully, and then while I was at it, I also made a chocolate bundt cake because our son's birthday is coming up and I know that he loves chocolate cake best. So I got that baking, and then I topped the apple pecan cake with a caramel sauce, and I'll have all of these recipes linked in the description for you. And I topped the chocolate cake with a peanut butter frosting. Good morning, friends. Today is pie making day, and these are the squash that I baked last night, and I'm just gonna pull the peels off of them, and I'm gonna blend them up to make pumpkin pies. Now, butternut squash is traditionally what my mom used to make pumpkin pies. I didn't even know, growing up, I didn't even know that there was such a thing as pumpkin used for pie making, because we always use butternut squash for pie making. So that's what I use. So basically it's squash pie. So I'm just gonna blend all this up and make pies. I honestly feel like when you bake the squash, like if you bake it in the peels, it tastes better than if you peel it and then bake it. So that's why I do it that way. It's just so much easier for me than to chop and peel those, big hard squash. And some of the pies that I'm gonna make today are going in the freezer. So I'll be taking you along and showing you what that looks like to make pies ahead of time. Make sure there's no pieces of peels on there. And then this part, I make sure that the seeds don't come along. All right, I'm ready to blend that, and then I'll measure it. First, I gotta go wash my hands. So for each pumpkin pie, I need 3 cups of pumpkin puree, and I'm making a double batch. So I need 6 cups of pumpkin puree, which is exactly what this gave me. But I know that my blender's not big enough to handle a double recipe. So I'm gonna do 1 recipe and then another recipe. So I need 3 cups of pumpkin puree. I need 3 eggs in each recipe. There's 3 eggs in that one. This is a duck egg. 1, 2, 3 eggs in that one. And then I need 1 cup of white sugar and 1 cup of brown sugar in each recipe. I need 1 teaspoon of salt in each recipe. I need 1 whole teaspoon of ground nutmeg in each recipe. And that's all the spices we use. Some call for cinnamon or just pumpkin pie spice, but our personal favorite is just nutmeg. I need a whole teaspoon of vanilla in each recipe. And I need 1/2 a cup of flour in each recipe. And then 1 quart of milk. So 1 quart is 4 cups, and this is a 2-cup measuring cup. So that's there's 1 quart. All right, that's everything. So now we're gonna mix this together. Okay, I better get my spatula. So I'm going to go down in the cold storage and choose 2 fruit pies to make. I already know I want to make pecan pies, but I think I'll make some cherry and blueberry pies as well. Probably one of each. Okay, next I'm gonna work on my pecan pies. I think I'll make 2 pecan pies. And like I said earlier, these are not all for us to eat right away. A lot of these are going in the freezer, and I will get them out and thaw them if we invite guests over. Anytime we invite guests over, it'll just be nice to have some pies in the freezer. So I'm gonna make 2 pecan pies. So I need 8 eggs. And all these recipes that I'm making will be linked in the description for you. I've done videos on pies before. And so I always think, oh, I gotta come up with brand new content. But then I remember that there's about 100,000 of you that weren't here last fall at Thanksgiving time. So you may not have gone back and watched those videos. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, there's 8 eggs. The reason I left my pumpkin pie fillings in the blender is because I want to blend them one more time then before I bake them. Because pumpkin pies bake best when your pumpkin pie filling is nice and foamy. So I'm going to beat my eggs. And then I'm going to add all of my other ingredients. So I need 1 teaspoon of vanilla for 1 pie, so I need 2. 3/4 cup of maple syrup for 1 pie. This is in place of corn syrup. So I need 1.5 cup of maple syrup because I'm making 2 pies. I need 1/3 cup of white sugar. So 1/3 plus 1/3. I need 2/3 cup. I need 2/3 cup of brown sugar. So 1/3, 2/3, 1/3, 2/3. 1/2 teaspoon of salt per pie. So I need a whole teaspoon of salt. And then my pecans. So I'm gonna mix this together. So I just added my butter and flour, but I forgot to film it. So for each recipe, you need 4 tablespoons of melted butter and 2 tablespoons of flour. So I melted my butter. I, of course, had to use 8 tablespoons of melted butter and 4 of flour. And that just helps the pie to sit up a little better, and the flour does, and the butter just adds this wonderful, good flavor. Butter just makes everything better. Okay, so I've got that. I've got all my ingredients in here. Now it's time to add our pecans. These pecans were a gift to me from somebody that lives in a warmer climate, and they send us a big box of pecans. Normally, pecan pie is kind of a expensive treat for us because pecans are expensive for us to buy at the grocery store. So I am excited to make a lot of pecan pies this year. And thank you. If that was one of you, I don't remember if it was an Instagram follower or YouTube or maybe both, but thank you. These pecans are so special to us. I think about you every time I get a bag out of the freezer and use them. So you need 10 ounces of pecans for every pie. So I have 20 ounces right here. And I'm just going to stir these in. And now there is that pie filling all ready to go. So we've got 2 pecans, we've got 6 pumpkin pies, we've got 1 blueberry and 1 cherry. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That means I need to make pie dough for 10 pies and a little more because I like for my fruit pies to have a crust on. So I'm going to say I need to make enough for 12 pies. Okay, so what did I say? 12. I want to make enough pie crust for 12 pies. My recipe makes 3, so I have to make my recipe times 4. So I need 12 cups of flour. I need 1 teaspoon of salt per recipe, so I need 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I need 1 teaspoon of baking soda per recipe, so 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just gonna mix that in a little bit. I need 1 cup of lard per recipe. You can use shortening if you don't have lard. And I know that there's recipes where you can use butter if you don't have lard. So this all gets mixed in until it's crumbly. I went the first probably 20 years of my homemaking career without owning a pastry cutter and just using my hands. So that's what I still like to do. I'll use my pastry cutter to get started, but this is how my mom taught me to make pie dough, so this is what feels most natural to me, is to use my hands. Okay, so now all these nice crumbs, you want to be real gentle with a pie dough because you want it to remain flaky. So you don't want to get real tough with it. So I'm gonna scrape all of these to the side and make a little ravine here. And I need about 1 cup of cold water for each recipe. So I need about 4 cups of cold water. So I'm gonna start with 3 cups. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm just gonna kind of push you just kind of layer it over each other. And it's a little dry. I like to err on the side of wet for my pie dough because I can always use flour when I roll it if it's too sticky. So I'm gonna add about 1/2 cup more of water. So that would bring us to 3.5 cups of water. And what I want is for my dough to stick together. I think there's still a lot of dry down there. So I'm gonna add a little more flat water. So I've got about 3 3/4 cups of water in here now. So basic rule of thumb is the easier your crust tears, the flakier it'll be. So that's why you don't want a real tough crust. So I know that my pumpkin pies are all, I need 5 pumpkin pies to take to invitations. So I'm hoping to have 1 pumpkin pie left to put in the freezer. So first I'm gonna bake the pecan pies. Make sure to mix that up real well. Well, you know what? I'm gonna make the other pecan pie right away. And if you've been here a while, you know that pie baking is one of my very favorite things to do. And I just love making pies. Part of the reason is because my mom loved baking pies, and my grandma loved baking pies. And so when my memories of pie baking are always with my mom being happy because she loved baking pies. And I would sit there on the bench and watch her, and she would always give me, my sisters and I had a little rolling pin, and she would give us little pieces of pie dough, like she'd give us these pieces, and we would make our own little pies. And so I have good memories of pie baking. So when my sisters and I and all our sister-in-laws, when we get together and we start planning the Thanksgiving meals, it's always about pies. Like desserts is just always pies. And because my sisters and I, we all love making pies. And sometimes we're like, well, I'm sorry, we say to our sister-in-laws, we don't mean to always bring the pies. You can bring some too if you want. And they're always like, no, you guys make the pies. I really don't like to make pies. So we're lucky that way that our sister-in-laws don't really love to make pies. So we always get to make the pies. And then when my sisters and I were discussing what pies we're going to make, I right away said, well, I'll make the pumpkin pies because I have lots of squash to use up. And we just start talking about what kind of pies we all want, and I wanted to make all of them. And I'm like, well, I really want to make the pecan pies too, and I want to make the cherry pies. I have cherries, but I needed to leave some pies for my sisters to make. So I decided I'm just going to make all the pies that I want to make, and I'm going to put them in the freezer for the entire season. So we're going to get these pecan pies in the oven. There's one pecan pie. All right, there's the 2 pecan pies. Okay, so now I'm going to start filling the pumpkin pies. I really should have started with them first because they take the longest to bake. The reason I use disposable pie plates for some of my pies is because of traveling for the holidays. So if I'm traveling for the holidays, I can leave any pies that are left, I can leave with the host, and she doesn't have to worry about bringing home my dishes. And so anytime that we have invites and I am, bringing pies, I try to use disposable pie plates. It just makes things easier. And my daughter they are invited away for the holidays to her husband's side of the family, and she said she would bring pumpkin pies. So I'm going to make some for her too. She was going to come and we were going to do this together, but then our grandson had a fever in the night. So she said, go ahead and get started. I don't know if I'll be leaving the house today. So I'm making pumpkin pies for her and for me. That is why I need 6. So I've got all my pumpkin pies rolled out, and I'm gonna fill them up with pie filling. You can fill pumpkin pies all the way to the very brim, because although they do rise when you're baking them, they tend to fall a little bit as they cool. So I like to fill mine all the way to the brim. Now, to get all of these into the oven without spilling them, because these pie plates are so cheap, they're so wiggly. Ah. All right, pumpkin and pecan are in the freezer. I mean, in the oven. And now we're gonna make the fruit pies. We're gonna make blueberry and cherry. And then I also have some mincemeat here. Last winter, I made a whole bunch of mincemeat mixture and froze it. So I'm gonna use some of that. And this keeps for years in the freezer because it has wine in it. And the alcohol content helps preserve it. I'm going to make the mincemeat pie yet. So mincemeat is like a sweet meat pie. So it's ground beef and then apples and raisins and sugar. That's our family's mincemeat pie anyway. Okay, now I've got all these scraps that I cut off from around the pie, and I use these last. These have more flour in, and they've already been worked, so they tend to be a little tougher and not as flaky. So I like to use these to make the lids for my pies. And if you're using my pie dough recipe, which I'll link in the description, or even any pie dough recipe. So if you're using a pie dough recipe and you're using a food processor to make it, that's part of your problem. Pie dough needs to be treated very gently, and it should not be tough to roll out. You rather want your pie dough to tear as you pick it up than have it be so tough that you have to really push to roll it. And you can see how much tougher this pie dough is than what I use straight out of the dish, because this has already been rolled and handled because it was the scraps. So if your pie dough is tough and rubbery, and dense, you're handling it too rough. So I use my scraps, and I'll use that. I'll use this to make my my lids or my tops for my fruit pies. So all you have to do to glue your pie doughs together is to make them a little wet. Who came to help Mommy make pies? Did you come to help make pies? Yes. So some of these pies I will be using in the next couple days, and those I'm just gonna put in this Tupperware pie saver, and those I'm gonna put in the refrigerator because those will be traveling with us to an invitation that we have. And then the ones that I wanna save for a couple weeks in the freezer, I will wrap those in tin foil. When I'm ready to serve the pies, I will simply put them in the refrigerator to defrost about 24 hours before I want to serve them. And if I want to serve them warm, I will just put them in a warm oven, like say 250 degrees for about 20 to 30 minutes. But most of the time, we will serve them chilled. To keep the pies from getting smashed in the freezer, I will stack them in using upside down dinner plates like this, and this will keep them from getting broken and crushed in the freezer. Okay, so now this one's ready for the freezer, and because we are celebrating Mitchell's birthday sooner than I thought we were going to, his birthday's not until next week, but we're gonna celebrate it this week at family dinner. Instead of putting his cake into the freezer, I am just going to put it in the refrigerator because we will be eating it tomorrow at family dinner. So this one's going into the refrigerator, this one's going into the freezer. Now, if I wanted to serve either one of these cakes at a wedding or a special event where we were having guests, I would probably wait to frost them until I got them out of the freezer. But because they're just for the family and my goal is to have quick food that makes it feel like a special occasion, I frosted them before I put them in the freezer because I want to be able to get them out and serve them and not still have to whip up the frosting. And the family won't care. So if you want to put the frosting on before you put them in the freezer, you will wait till the frosting is a little hard over the top, and then you'll put them into the freezer. That way the frosting won't get all smudged. And I'm going to say that this one, we will probably eat this one within a month. Normally when I make something for the freezer, I try to think of something that's a size that fits into my containers, my freezer containers. Like I have some 9x13 freezer containers. So I try to, make something that fits in there and has less chances of getting freezer burnt that way. But as long as we eat this within, I'd say 4 to 6 weeks, we won't have any freezer burn on it. So this one's going in the freezer, this one's going into the refrigerator. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's video, and one of the other things that we did was we made our make-ahead mashed potatoes, which can be stored in the refrigerator for a week or the freezer for a month. And I don't have time to show you all of that in this week's video, but the link to the recipe and the video that I posted last Thanksgiving or last Christmas season, I will link that in the description. Do not forget to head over to Carolina Cooker to enter the giveaway and find the link to the pans and the discount code in the description of this video.